She was just an old, lonely woman living by the river. One morning, she heard a cry, a baby floating in a basket. No one knew where the child came from, and no one dared to ask. But 20 years later, that same baby returned wearing a crown. He wasn't looking for love, he was looking for answers. And when the truth came out, the whole kingdom was left in shock. The woman who saved him was no ordinary villager. She was part of the secret that changed his destiny forever. The river never forgets, and neither do those it saves. This is the story of the boy who rose from the river, and returned as a king. Once upon a time, in the quiet village of Abani, there lived an old woman named Mama Zoba. Her hands were wrinkled from years of working in the fields, and her heart carried the weight of loneliness. She had lost her husband to illness, and her only son had disappeared in a tribal war long ago. Every morning, she walked down to the river to fetch water, the same river that carried away her tears, her dreams, and her prayers. But one misty morning, as the golden sun began to rise over the water, she heard something that stopped her heart. A faint cry. At first, she thought it was an animal, maybe a wounded bird or a baby goat, but as she drew closer, she saw something floating between the reeds. A basket. Her hands trembled as she waded into the cold water. Inside the basket lay a baby boy, wrapped in fine silk, unlike anything she had ever seen in her poor village. His skin glowed in the morning light, and around his tiny wrist was a golden bracelet engraved with a royal symbol, a lion and a sun. Mama Zoba gasped. By the ancestors, she whispered. Someone had thrown away a royal child. She looked around, but the riverbanks were empty. Whoever left this baby was gone. Her heart, the same heart that had been empty for years, suddenly filled with warmth. She lifted the crying baby and held him to her chest. My little river child, she said softly, the gods have sent you to me. From that moment, she named him Tendo, meaning, gift from the river. But what Mama Zoba didn't know was that the same river that brought her this blessing, had also carried a secret powerful enough to shake kingdoms. Years passed, and Tendo grew under the warm care of Mama Zoba. Though she was poor, she gave him everything her heart could offer: stories by the fire, lessons about kindness, and the wisdom of the ancestors. The villagers often whispered about the boy she had found by the river. Look at his eyes, some said. They shine like a prince's. Others warned, no child comes from the river without reason. He brings something with him, a destiny, or a curse. Mama Zoba would only smile. To me, he is a blessing, she'd say. Tendo was different, not just in looks, but in spirit. He was gentle yet brave, curious yet humble. When other boys fought over food, he shared his. When elders argued, he listened and calmed them with wise words far beyond his years. But one day, when he was 12, something happened that changed everything. He was bathing by the river, the same place Mama Zoba had found him, when he saw something strange on his arm. A mark, faint but clear, shaped like a lion surrounded by a rising sun. He ran to Mama Zoba. Grandmother, look, he cried. She froze. Her hands trembled. She had seen that mark before, engraved on the golden bracelet she had buried secretly years ago. Her voice shook. Tendo, my child, where did that come from? It was always there, he said innocently. But now it glows when the sun touches it. That night, she couldn't sleep. She took out the small box hidden under her bed, the one holding the royal bracelet. When she compared the mark, her fears were confirmed. It was the royal emblem of the kingdom of Doma, a symbol worn only by the heirs of King Okoro, a ruthless ruler known for his cruelty and greed. Mama Zoba sat by the fire, staring at the sleeping boy. Had she been raising the son of a tyrant, or a child born to change the kingdom? The next morning, she decided to keep the truth hidden. She burned the box and buried the ashes near the river. No one must know who you are, she whispered. The world is not ready, but destiny cannot be buried. Years turned into decades. Tendo became a strong, wise young man, tall, with deep brown eyes that held both kindness and power. People came from other villages to seek his advice, calling him the boy with the spirit of kings. But far away, in the grand palace of Doma, something was happening. King Okoro had died mysteriously, leaving behind chaos. Rumors spread that the rightful heir, a baby who vanished 20 years ago, still lived. The kingdom's seer spoke a prophecy. The river that took the child shall return him crown. That very same night, strange things began happening in the village of Abani. Lightning struck near Mama Zoba's hut. The river overflowed its banks for the first time in decades. And at midnight, a group of royal guards appeared, carrying a scroll sealed with the royal emblem of the lion and sun. They were searching for someone. When Tendo opened the door, the captain froze. His voice trembled as he looked at the mark glowing on Tendo's arm. It's him, the captain whispered. The lost prince has been found. Mama Zoba's heart nearly stopped. She realized that the prophecy had come true, but she also knew something else. If Tendo returned to that kingdom, he might never come back alive. Because the same people searching for the lost prince were also the ones who threw him into the river. The night the royal guards came was heavy with wind and fear. Mama Zoba stood at the door, clutching her shawl tightly. The captain bowed his head. "Forgive us, mother," he said. "We come on orders of the royal council." The mark on the young man's arm belongs to the house of Doma. Tendo looked from the guards to Mama Zoba, confused. "Mother, what are they saying?" Her lips trembled. "My son, I should have told you long ago." She brought out the ashes of the burned bracelet, the only thing she had kept hidden all these years, and unwrapped the charred remains. "This belonged to you, Tendo. You were found by the river as a baby. I don't know who left you there, but this mark means you came from the royal palace." Tendo stood still, his breath shallow. The words fell over him like thunder. "I am a prince." Tears filled Mama Zoba's eyes. "To me, you will always be my child. But to them, yes, you are something more." The guards bowed again. "Your Highness, the kingdom is without a ruler. The council believes you are the one spoken of in prophecy, the river's son who will restore peace." The journey back to the kingdom took 3 days. Every mile closer filled Tendo with both wonder and dread. When the palace came into view, its golden roofs glittered under the sun, beautiful, yet somehow cold. At the gates, thousands knelt as he entered, but not all faces were welcoming. Among the crowd, a woman in fine robes watched him with narrowed eyes. Queen Mother Sefu, the widow of King Okoro. Her voice was sweet but sharp. "So the river brings back what it once took," she said. "Tell me, young man, how do we know you are truly the prince?" The captain stepped forward. "He bears the mark of the lion." The seer confirmed it. Sefu smiled faintly. "Then let the river speak for itself." That night, Tendo was led to a great hall filled with councilmen, warriors, and servants. At the center stood a throne carved from ivory. The seer, an old blind man draped in white, lifted his staff. "The truth lies not in crown, but in hearts," he said. "Let him tell us who raised him, and how he came to us." Tendo told them everything, how Mama Zoba found him, how she gave him love when he had nothing, and how she taught him to listen to the river's song. The hall was silent when he finished. Then the seer nodded. "The river chose well, but the Queen Mother rose from her seat. And what if the river was deceived? We all know what the prophecy says, the one who returns shall rule, and the one who betrayed shall fall. Tell me, councilman, who among us would benefit most from a child disappearing 20 years ago?" Whispers filled the room. The queen's words carried hidden venom, for she feared one thing: the boy's return meant her own son's power was gone. That night, she sent for Tendo in secret. He found her waiting by a balcony overlooking the royal garden. "You seem like a good man," she said softly. "But this palace, it destroys good men. Leave while you can. I will give you gold, land, anything, but do not claim this throne." Tendo looked at her, puzzled. "Why do you fear the truth, my queen?" Her smile vanished. "Because truth can kill kings." Before he could reply, she turned away and disappeared into the shadows. The next morning, the seer called for a ceremony at the river, the same river where Tendo had been found. All of Doma gathered to watch. As the drums rolled and the people chanted, the seer spoke. 20 years ago, a child of the lion was cast into this river. The one who ordered it feared the prophecy, but the river never forgets. Today, that child returns to claim what is his. He dipped his staff into the water. When he raised it again, the tip glowed with a golden light, and the mark on Tendo's arm shone like the sun. Gasps echoed through the crowd. The Queen Mother staggered back. "No, it can't be." The seer turned toward her. "The river remembers faces too, Queen Sefu. You were the one who ordered the child thrown away." The crowd erupted in shock. She fell to her knees, trembling. "I did it to protect my son. The prophecy said one heir would die so another could live." But the people had seen enough. They began chanting Tendo's name, their voices rising like a storm. Tendo stepped forward, not with anger, but sorrow. He lifted his hand for silence. "Your Majesty," he said gently, "you feared a prophecy, and yet you fulfilled it. I do not wish for your death. The kingdom has seen enough pain. From this day, there will be no revenge, only peace." The crowd went quiet. The seer nodded, smiling faintly. "The river has chosen not just a king, but a heart worthy of a crown." That evening, the people of Doma celebrated under the stars. Mama Zoba, frail but proud, was brought to the palace in a golden chariot. When she saw Tendo on the throne, her eyes filled with tears. He rose, walked down the steps, and knelt before her. "Mother," he said softly, "without you, there would be no king." She touched his head. "And without the river, there would be no you." Thus, the lost child of the river became the king of Doma, not by blood, but by heart. And every year, he visited the same river where his life began, to lay flowers for the mother who found him, and the water that saved him. Months passed since Tendo took the throne. Under his rule, the kingdom of Doma began to breathe again. Markets reopened, children sang by the wells, and for the first time in many years, laughter echoed through the street. But peace, like a sleeping lion, never stays quiet for long. One evening, as the new king walked through the garden where the river's water flowed into marble fountain, an old guard approached him and bowed low. "Your Majesty," the man said, "there is someone who insists she must speak to you. She carries a seal of the late Queen Mother." Tendo frowned. The Queen Mother, Sephu, had been sent away to live in a distant monastery after her confession. Few spoke her name. "Bring her," he said softly. Moments later, a young woman entered the courtyard, tall, veiled, her step steady. When she lifted the veil, the moonlight revealed eyes that looked hauntingly familiar. "My name is Layla," she said. "I am the daughter of Queen Sephu." The words hit Tendo like cold rain. He had known that Sephu had a son who had vanished years ago, but a daughter. No one had ever told him. Layla bowed. "I come not for vengeance," she said, "but for truth. My mother is dying. She says there was more to the story of the river." Layla's voice trembled as she continued. "She told me that when you were born, there were 2 marks of the lion, one on your arm, and one on another child's." The council feared confusion, so the midwife switched one baby for another. "My mother discovered it too late, and to silence the truth, she obeyed the king's order to throw the marked child away." Tendo's heart pounded. "You mean, there was another?" "Yes," Layla whispered. "The midwife fled that night, taking the second child. She vanished beyond the borders. My mother always feared that child might one day return." The king turned toward the river. The wind carried whispers from the water, just as it had when he was a boy. If the story was true, then somewhere out there another bore his royal mark. He looked back at Layla. "Thank you for telling me. I made a promise to rule with truth. I will find this child, not to destroy, but to understand." Weeks later, word came from the northern villages. A man calling himself Kale had gathered followers, claiming the throne of Doma by birthright of the lion. When Tendo heard the name, something in his chest twisted. He ordered a peaceful summon, not an army. "If he is truly my brother," the king said, "let the river judge us both." The meeting was set at the same river where everything began. The sun was sinking when Kale arrived. He was tall, proud, his eyes the same deep brown as Tendo's. "So," Kale said with a half-smile, "you're the river's child. The council calls you king, but the mark belongs to us both." Tendo stepped forward slowly. "Then let us both stand before the river. Let the gods decide whose heart carries the lion's courage." They walked into the shallow water until it touched their knees. The seer, now frail but still wise, raised his staff once more. "The lion is not chosen by birth," he said, "but by the blood it spares." Lightning flashed above them. For a moment, both marks glowed, Kale's faintly, Tendo's like fire. Then Kale sank to his knees. Tears cut down his cheeks. "All my life I was told I was stolen," he whispered. "If the river has chosen you, then my fight ends here." Tendo reached out and lifted him. "Brother, your pain ends with me. Doma needs 2 lions, one to rule, one to protect." Back at the palace, Tendo announced before the people, "The river gave me life, but it also gave me a brother. From this day, we will rule together, 2 hearts, 1 kingdom." The crowd roared with joy. Mama Zoba, watching from the steps, smiled through tears. The prophecy had been misunderstood all along. The one who returns shall rule, and the one who betrayed shall fall. It never spoke of blood, it spoke of unity. Tendo kept his promise, to rule with mercy, to honor the river, and to heal what greed had broken. And every year, he and Kale returned to that quiet bend in the water where an old woman once heard a baby cry, to lay flowers on the shore and whisper the same words she once did. The river never forgets. It only returns what is meant to be. Years passed. Under the rule of King Tendo and Prince Kale, the kingdom of Doma became a land of peace. Fields that had once turned to dust now shimmered with golden maize. Fishermen sang at dawn. Children ran barefoot through the courtyards, chasing the same birds that once flew over the lonely hut of Mama Zoba. But time, like the river, never stops flowing. One cool morning, a messenger arrived from the old monastery. Queen Sephu, the woman who once betrayed her own blood, was dying. Her final wish was to speak to the son she once cast away. Tendo didn't hesitate. He took only 1 guard and Kale beside him, traveling through forests and dusty roads until the stone walls of the monastery appeared. Inside, a frail voice called out, "Tendo, my child." The old queen lay on a straw mat, her silver hair thin as spider silk. Tendo knelt beside her, his heart heavy. "I am not here for anger," he said softly. I only came to let you rest in peace." Tears rolled down Sephu's wrinkled cheeks. "For years I prayed that the river would wash away my sin, but it never did. It carried them back to me, in your eyes." Kale stepped forward. "Mother, your guilt ends here. You gave us life, even if the world took it away for a time." The old queen smiled weakly. Then the river was kind after all. Her hand slipped from his, and silence filled the room, heavy, but peaceful. Back in Doma, Tendo declared a new day of remembrance, the Festival of Rivers. Every year, people would gather by the water to honor those lost, to forgive, and to begin again. On the first morning of the festival, Mama Zoba was carried through the crowd on a golden chair. Her hair was white now, her hands trembling, but her eyes still shone like dawn. The king knelt before her and said, "Mother, I was born from your kindness, not your blood. Everything this kingdom is, it began with you." Mama Zoba smiled. "No, my son. It began with the river, and the heart that listened." She reached out, touching both Tendo and Kale's hands together. When brothers stand as one, even the river bows. The crowd cheered. Music filled the air. Dancers swirled. Drums beat in rhythm with the heartbeat of the land. That night, long after the celebration ended, Tendo walked alone to the bend of the river where Mama Zoba had first found him. The moonlight turned the water to silver. Fireflies drifted over the reed. He closed his eyes and whispered, "River, you gave me life when the world tried to take it. Tell me, what do I owe you?" And in the soft rustle of the reeds, he seemed to hear a voice, gentle, like a mother's lullaby. "You owe me nothing, child of mercy. You repaid me each time you chose kindness over pride, truth over power. Remember, even when forgotten, the river always remembers." Tendo smiled, tears glimmering in his eyes. He placed a carved wooden lion, the royal symbol, into the water and watched it float away. Years later, storytellers across Africa spoke of the boy from the river, the orphan who rose to become the Lion King of Doma. They told of the old woman whose heart was stronger than any crown, and of two brothers who proved that blood is not the only bond that makes a family. In every village, elders would end the tale with the same words, "When you show mercy, you become a king in the eyes of the river."